Hello, boxing fans, and welcome to another news update. I'm Kurt Ward, and I'm joined by Alex Morris, Adam Smith, Paul McAllister, and Paul Webb. And we're going to be looking at the strange news regarding Sergey Kovalev and Adonis Stevenson, where after Kovalev's promoter, Kathy Duva, called for a purse bid in the hope of landing the fight, they've actually pulled out and cancelled the purse bids and give quite a few reasons, but none of them make sense to a lot of boxing fans. And Paul Webb, I'll go to you first. I mean, I'll read out some of the reasons in a minute, but what are you making of this regarding Duva? Because she seems to have made a bit of a tit of herself, shall we say?
I mean, it's difficult for Kathy Duva because she's basically pushed this fight more than Stevenson's side has. She's been the one telling us that this is a fight that's got to happen, pushing for the purse bid. She's getting the sanctioning bodies to go for it. And then it turns out, like with most situations with Al Heyman, she knows in any purse bid scenario will beat her. Can't put the money up to better Heyman. So because of the deal that Kovalev's got with HBO, she doesn't want to ruin that by taking him off and letting him fight on Showtime. So the fight isn't going to happen in any way. And she's just looked. It's the problem with since this has been going on. Stevenson's always been portrayed to be the bad guy. He's the one ducking the fight. He left HBO to go to Showtime to avoid this fight, and all of that's been said for the last year or so. But now the shoe's on the other foot, and Duva looks like she's just going out of her way to not make the fight happen. And you're going to go through the reasons, but none of them wash. I mean, the fact is, she doesn't want to lose the fight off the network.
Well, you make a point about losing the bid to Heyman. I think that's what everyone realizes. But Yvonne Micheli, who obviously promotes Adonis Stevenson, because obviously Al Heyman's his advisor, he responded to this and he said, "This is to Duva. You must have done your deal with HBO just recently because you were quoted right after the Pascal fight that it was Kovalev's last fight of your current contract with HBO. This is one of the reasons we requested the WBC to hold a rapid purse bid since we believed you could freely participate and this could be the potentially the richest light heavyweight fight in boxing history. You certainly knew that agreeing to a new contract so quickly with HBO without having their full support to win the purse bid was jeopardising the fight from happening." Um, Alex Morris, I think you're gonna defend Kathy Duva on this.
I don't know if I can really defend Kathy Duva, but I can try and defend Kovalev. Certainly, I mean Kovalev, I believe really wants to fight. He's certainly he's a fighter that will go abroad and fight anywhere, and you've got to respect him for that. And I don't think that Stevenson is somehow a bigger threat to him now ever since Stevenson beat Beaker. He managed to knock Beaker down. He didn't even knock Beaker out. I don't think watching that fight has suddenly put the fear of God into him or the fear of the pimp into him. I think it's Duva messing about and being a bit silly, or well, not silly, probably stupid. To be a bit more blunt about it with her dealings. She's trying to score a better deal, perhaps because she obviously knows she won't win purse bids against the likes of Heyman. I think that she's trying to angle for a better deal, and a better deal that suits her and her agenda, rather than being forced to fight on Showtime and having Heyman control the majority of pretty much all of the fight. Rather, I mean, yeah, Kovalev will get a 50-50 split if it did go to purse splits, but I imagine Duva wants 50-50, but on HBO pay-per-view kickback, no options, that sort of thing. And I think that she's made herself look very foolish by calling for these purse bids and then backing out of them just because she knows she can't win it. Obviously, she does have the contractual agreement with HBO, but as you said, that's been made to look redundant again because they only recently signed that. So, unfortunately, for all of the ducking that Adonis has done and the bitchiness that he's acted, I think that Duva is the one to blame here.
Yeah, I mean, I like Kathy. I think she's done a great job with Kovalev. I mean, I think when he first went to them, his first paycheck was $5,000, I believe, and in a matter of years, he's made over $1 million in his last few fights. He's obviously picked up 3 world titles, and he's a must-see fighter now. But one of her excuses, which I actually found quite funny, was when she said the current strength of the American dollar and fluctuating exchange rates in Russia and Canada make revenue predictions done 6 months in advance of this particular event even more speculative. Paul, Paul McAllister, I mean, is this just what's she playing at with this? Do you think?
I think she's just had a bluff called. Really, I think
Yeah.
she really believed that Stevenson and Heyman or whoever it is who controls his career. I think she thought that they just run away again and vacate the WBC belt and just live off that lineal title, and that Kovalev could just pick up the WBC belt cheaply. But now that obviously Stevenson and his promoters have said, no, we fancy this fight now. Let's get the deal done. And she's realised, that's not what I thought was happening. We actually can't make this fight, even though I've been running around for the past year telling everyone how desperate I am to make it. She's basically they pulled her pants down, basically, made her look and shown her up. She wanted the WBC belt, thought that Stevenson would just vacate it. He hasn't vacated it. He's up for the fight now. And she's realised, I can't let Kovalev go to Showtime or PBC, wherever, and fight Stevenson, because that will jeopardise my deal. And if I lose my deal with HBO, then I'm finished as a promoter, because that's basically what's keeping her in business.
Adam, what do you make of like the TV deals that these guys have? I mean, it's a bizarre situation where in other sports it doesn't happen. You know, it's like Man United not being able to play Chelsea this year because one plays on Sky and one plays on another channel. I mean, you got a fighter in Kovalev now who's apparently tied to HBO and can't fight off it. Stevenson is obviously with Heyman, so he's not going to be going anywhere near HBO. And it's the fans who end up missing out again.
Yeah, and that's the point there. The fans are missing out. I've basically gave up trying to follow the ins and outs of the politics and the bids and the falling out and the backstabbing and the press releases and the big checks on Sky Sports. I'm fed up with it. I am fed up. It's a shame. I feel mostly for Kovalev because Kathy Duver, obviously, as Paul's just said, hasn't got the biggest of tables in the world and punches above her weight in terms of what she manages to develop fighters from virtually nothing. As you said, Kovalev's paydays were like virtually nothing to start with. She's built him up. She's got him big. He's vying for top kid at a quite popular and entertaining weight. And yeah, it does seem like she's tried a bit of a double bluff, and she might have come up short. But other than the fight that happens in a couple of weeks' time in Vegas, this really is the one for me. They both got pretty decent followings as well and are crossing over quite simply, like Golovkin are crossing over just because they knock people out, the pair of them. I know Stevenson has somewhat slowed in that department, but yeah, other than that, other than the biggie, this is the next one for me. There's not many other fights I would prefer really, other than AJ against Fraudley. That's the only one I can think of that matches it. So it's just disappointment, and it's almost as if it's not even a shock. It's just, oh, here we go, we get his boxing, here we go again.
Well, that's the sad thing, isn't it? It's not. It seems to be, as fans, we're more shocked when the fights actually do get made.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's bang on, and it's just a plain disappointment. But the one thing I don't want to happen is Adonis come out of this with any credit. I don't want that to happen, and I think we'll put a stop to that.
Well, they're using it already, aren't they? Adonis, I think he's tweeted out saying that it's all a publicity stunt by Kovalev and Duva. They were trying to, I think what Paul McAllister said, they were like expecting them to run, but they haven't. They've wanted the fight now apparently, and now obviously Adonis Stevenson seems to be getting more favour, where for the past couple of years he's been seen as the bad guy. I'll go to you, Paul Webb. Do you think this fight will happen? It took 5 years to make the big fight on May 2nd. We can't wait that long for this fight. Will it happen, and if so, when?
I think it will, or it can do, but certainly not this year and in the near future. If Kovalev has got a long-term deal with HBO, then that kills it completely, because there would be an option where Kovalev could fight on Showtime. That's a more of a viable option than Stevenson ever fighting on HBO. Heyman and HBO will never come together apart from the fighter A and fighter B. The fight should happen, and a lot of people that think it's a foregone conclusion for Kovalev, I don't agree with that. It is outside of one or two real super fights. It is really, like Adam said, it's really up there. It's a fight that's got to happen, but I don't see how it can. I mean, it's the network problem. The fight isn't big enough for the two networks to come together to make a super fight like they've done with Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao, because the money's not the same, there's no incentive for the two networks to risk getting the fight on and risk giving ground to the other. And it's the age-old problem. And again, fans lose out, and fans don't give a toss what channel the fight is on. It doesn't make any difference. But again, the fighters would fight each other. I think Stevenson would fight Kovalev. I think Kovalev would fight Stevenson. But it's just promoters and TV executives that don't want to get the nose put out of joint. And Stevenson's old, remember? Let's get it right. I mean, he's not a young bloke. And if this fight doesn't happen in a couple of years, will it be the same kind of fight it could be if it happened this year? Probably not.
I think
Stevenson
the longer it
will
goes,
slow down faster.
Yeah, the longer it goes, it will surely look better for Kovalev.
Surely they can make some sort of obviously it's going to be pay-per-view. I think that if it's on Showtime pay-per-view, which is probably the only a meeting ground that's possible, I would say, despite the fact that Kovalev's got this HBO exclusive deal, I think that surely they can arrange some sort of kickback for HBO out of this. Surely Kovalev can say, "Oh, I'll pay you X amount from whatever I earn on this Showtime deal." HBO won't be earning necessarily as much, but they're earning more than the fight not happening at all, because I can't ever see Stevenson leaving Heyman or Heyman letting him fight on HBO.
Me personally, I think HBO have a lot to answer for, to be honest. I mean, they had both fighters on the network, didn't they? They had both fighters on the same card when Stevenson fought Bellew in the main event. Kovalev knocked out Ismail Shalak. Then they were negotiating for his next fight, and apparently HBO weren't keen on his next fight. Who was it against? I can't even remember at the Fonfara, I believe it was. HBO apparently weren't too keen on it and weren't interested in it, and they said no. And obviously, we don't know if that was all the whole reason, because obviously Stevenson was going to Heyman as well. But if HBO had signed that for that fight, Stevenson might still be there now. But he went there, Showtime backed him, and he stuck with them. And now you've got a case again where HBO could have said to Duva, go for the purse bids, we'll back you. I mean, you can see it from their point of view. They've built. I mean, NBC built Kovalev, and then obviously he moved on to the next level, which is HBO. HBO have built him now. They've shown him against Hopkins. They've shown him against Pascal. They don't want that fight being on Showtime. But you've got to back them. I mean, if Al Heyman beats you in the bid, well, so be it. I mean, we saw Al Heyman put in a ridiculous bid for James DeGale against Dirrell. I thought Eddie Hearn put in a really good bid as well, and I was surprised that he lost out bidding that much. Al has shown that what he wants, he usually gets. But I think HBO should have just went for it, and then if they lost the bid to Al, well, then I think they've got to come to agreement and let Kovalev take the fight. I mean, the fight needs to happen.
But there's a level of acceptance with, like, Eddie Hearn understood that, I've had a go. Heyman has got much bigger guns than I have. He's got a much bigger checkbook than I have. So he lost, and it takes a bit of humility for another promoter to just say, okay, well, I'll put my bid in. HBO back me. If Showtime put more money up for the fight than HBO are willing to, then the fight goes to Showtime. If HBO are willing to back Duva with millions and they outbid, and then the fight doesn't happen because Heyman doesn't let Stevenson fight on HBO, then you can put the blame back on Stevenson's side. At the moment, it's gone from being all about a ducky Stevenson and blaming him, and it's for me, it's completely changed this week. It goes back to, do you know what? Both promoters are as bad as each other. Both want it on their channel. No one's willing to give any ground, and again, fans lose out on the fight.
Yeah, and the sad thing is, there's not a lot of options for Kovalev if you look at it. Stevenson, whatever you might think, he has got the options. I mean, where he's based makes him available to Jean Pascal. Even someone like Lucien Boutet, people will pay to see those fights. Bernard Hopkins has said he would like to fight him. He's still got options. Even if fans might not be desperate to see those fights, he's still got options to make money in big fights. Chavez Jr. is another fight that you could see Stevenson taking on in the future. Kovalev doesn't seem to have those options.
You know what the problem is?
He's going to end up fighting someone like Isaac Chilemba.
Well,
which is not even a joke.
Isaac Chilemba.
He's with main events as well now, so yeah.
Yeah, that'll be that. I honestly reckon that'll be Kovalev's next fight. Will be Isaac Chilemba.
Well, he's got to fight Mohammadi first, hasn't he? He's got to fight the mandatory first, and then I think Chilemba will be the fight in the fall.
That's the problem with having all these belts, though, isn't it? He's going to have to be fighting some really mucky mandatories if he wants to keep hold of his 3 belts, before the Stevenson fight comes to fruition. I mean, we've seen it happen with Vlad. He fights some really shitty opposition just to keep his belts, and that's the downside of having you unified champions.
The problem for me is we're talking about the business people, businessmen and women again, and really, as we've seen with, like for Cotto, as we'll probably come on to, taking soft defences, don't even want to be at middleweight, etc., etc., etc. Kovalev and Stevenson, by all accounts, actually want this fight, and we're talking about the business people again.
Couldn't agree any more with that. That's exactly right. We're talking about the business and about the numbers and about TV networks. We should be talking about 2 people punching each other. But invariably, the last few weeks, that's all we've had to discuss.
One last thing. Do you guys think it will ever get to the point where Kovalev just throws his hands up and kicks Kapidova to the curb or leaves her when his deal expires and signs with Heyman, chasing the money?
I don't think so. I think that Caffey's done well by him and got him where he is. I don't think he's that money orientated and that sort of callous to do that unless Caffey really fucks him over.
Everyone's money orientated if you offer them enough money.
Yeah,
I think that's a good point.
And as we said, he's not on fortunes, is he? With Duva, I wouldn't blame Kovalev at all if, when his deal's over, he just says, you know what, I'm going to go where the money is. I haven't got a long career. I'm going to go sign with the Dark Lord and fight on PBC and get some money.
If you look at the fighters that promoters have had, the minute the promoters have been unable to provide a good opportunity for them, they walk. I mean, look at someone like Amir Khan. Frank Warren, after he got knocked out, rebuilt his career, paid the money to get him the world title fight, and then Khan went, okay, thanks, see you. There's no loyalty with it. I don't think he's loyal. He's thankful of what Kathy's done for him. But in the other side of it, it works both ways. Without Kovalev, Kathy Duva would be fucked right now. She's got nobody.
It's a bit like James McDonough when he had that stadium fight over here for his world title, and he won it, and then he jumped to Eddie Hearn as soon as he could. I mean, it's harsh on the promoter, but you can understand it if the guy doesn't believe he's getting the opportunities or the paydays that he's getting.
How much is Kovalev earning though? It's not as if he's on a pittance.
I think he didn't earn as much money as he should have done for the Hopkins unification fight, considering how much of a big fight it was. Didn't he only end up with a couple $100 grand?
Still a fair amount. I mean, it's not as if the light heavyweights are the big league necessarily. I mean, how much do you expect to be earning these days at light heavyweight?
Well, when he looks over the divide and he sees Leo Santa Cruz earning ridiculous money, then
fortunes.
Exactly.
I just think personally, I think Kovalev has said he's got nothing but respect for Kathy Duva and what he's done. But if someone's in his ear as well, they've always got these managers and whatnot neck with them, and if he sees the fights that he could get, like I said, those names mentioned, someone like a Chavez, for instance, they're big fights, even if they're not. They'd look upon as easy for the guy. Stevenson's got the options right now, which is a shame for Kovalev.
Just a side note here, Kurt. Chavez is a viable and acceptable opponent for the 2 guys that today's topic's about, but he's not acceptable for Carl Froch.
Right, that's the end of that.
Right, yep.
It's a good video.
Yeah, I like to add him out. Let's shut him out right now before he gets going. I'd like to thank Alex Morris, Paul McAllister, Paul Webb, Adam out, Brian King for choosing the treadmill, if you believe him, over this. I'd like to keep subscribing, people, and leave your comments below. Thanks a lot.